everybody. This is Sandy from Gifted Travel Network. I'm so sorry to be 5 minutes late showing up for you today. We had some technical glitch, but got that all worked out for you, all worked out now. So I am here and excited to talk about our topic of the day. First, let me say that I am here without my co-worker Shannon. My colleague Shannon is always usually with me on this conversation on Travel Agent Success Series. However, as many of you may know, she is in Louisiana outside New Orleans. And so she was, as many people were, very negatively impacted by Hurricane Ida. She is safe, and all of our thoughts go out to all of those people who were so devastated by the wind and the rain that storm brought in. So know that we are all thinking about you, and hopefully Shannon will be back with me next week so we can host this together. So the topic of the day today is fees. So we're going to talk about fees. We're going to talk about how things have changed in 2021 versus 2020, 2019, and even before that. And would love to have you comment on your experience, your questions, any insight you want to share around it. But first, I'd love to know where you're joining from. So in the comments, say hello. Let us know where you're joining from. Let us know how long you've been in the travel industry, and then we'll talk about fees in a way that applies to both those who are new to the industry as well as those who've been in for a long time. So, and if you're watching the recording of this after we've aired live, please, we keep an eye on the comments, so please share your thoughts and comments as we go along as well. So let's start with some basic definitions so that we're all on the same page when we talk about fees. What I'm talking about is in the travel industry, what are called service fees, professional fees. There's a whole host of different names that they go by. I prefer professional fees rather than service fee. But what it is an amount of money that is charged by an advisor and paid by a client that is for the services provided by the travel advisor. It's not something that later goes towards the trip. There are something called pay to go or plan to go fees, where you might charge a client $250, and if they book with you, then you apply that $250 to the trip. I'm not talking about those kinds of fees today. I really discourage people from charging those, because I think that it kind of comes across as I'm not really comfortable charging fees, so I'm just going to kind of dip my toe in the water. And feel free to disagree with me if you want to comment on that. Please feel free to do so in the comments. I just think that you are a service professional. You have a lot of expertise. You have put in a lot of time helping people craft vacations. You have connections in the industry. You have a tremendous amount of wisdom and knowledge. And for those things, you should be compensated. And yes, you are compensated by the travel companies that you work with in the form of commissions, but you should also be compensated by the clients. And let's be honest, a lot of people jump into fees because they are trying to help make more money at the end of the year. But the real reason for charging a fee should be because you are a professional and you should be compensated as a professional. The same way you pay an attorney, an architect, your tax professional. And another thing about fees that has always perplexed me is a lot of times people say, well, they book with me every year. I don't want to charge them a fee every year. I bet your tax accountant charges you to do your taxes every year. So that argument just never made much sense to me. So aside from all that, now that we've kind of shared some definitions, I want to talk a little bit about how fees have changed and what they look like in the landscape of today's environment. Again, the fee is something that you charge directly to the client. So when you first start working with them, you share with them what your fee structure is. And for most people, I think most advisors, the fee is based on the type of trip that you are planning, the complexity. So you may have a structure of several different types. So one, an FIT that's 14 days in Europe is going to be more than a 7-night cruise, probably. So you have different levels depending on the complexity of the trip. But typically, that per trip fee is a flat rate. It might be structured so that it's more the longer the trip is, regardless of the type. There's lots of ways people do it. But a lot of advisors have really looked at those fees, and maybe that fee was set in 2017, 2016, further back than that. And what they realized last year was, yep, that fee covered what I did for the booking. However, it didn't cover all the time that I spent when I was canceling the booking and then rebooking it and then canceling it again and then rebooking it again. And so what we've seen a lot of advisors doing this year is either instituting cancellation fees or rebooking fees, or in some cases what they're doing is saying, I will cancel your trip and rebook your trip one time, included in whatever my fee is. So if your fee is $500, then you have it spelled out, and you should always have this spelled out because your clients are going to need to sign and agree to it. And of course, all that can be done digitally, so you don't have to give them a piece of paper. And so you will share with them what's included, and it may be that you book the trip, you'll reschedule and rebook it up to one time, and then beyond that, it's a greater amount of money. But a lot of advisors have said, what I was charging is just not sufficient for today's environment. And it may be that in 2 years' time from now, we may be having this conversation and people have gone back to their fee structure of 2 years ago. Not necessarily the dollar amount, but the way that it is structured and included, because the canceling and the rebooking may become a separate item and just may not be as important because it's not happening as much as it is happening right now while we're still dealing with COVID restrictions around the world. So some people are doing that. Another trend that I've seen, and before I talk about that, let me just say, if you want to leave a comment about what I'm saying, or if you want to share whether you charge a per trip fee, a per person fee, a plan to go fee, an annual fee, whatever you charge, I'd love to see your thoughts on that. If you want to share that in the comments. So another fee that was gaining in popularity prior to 2020 was the annual fee or retainer model. So in this situation, you have where this is typically seen is where you have advisors who have a pretty stable group of clients that they're working with. And so rather than charging them every single time they plan a trip, they instead charge them a flat fee for the year. And it does a couple of things. One, it frees up the client so that they know that no matter whether I'm going away for the weekend and just need a hotel room, or I'm planning a big anniversary trip or a short trip, doesn't matter what I'm planning. I have to be concerned about I don't have to be concerned about whether or not the advisor is available, because I'm in their stable of clients, and they are guaranteed to assist me. So that's one thing where that makes a lot of sense. Another place that it makes a lot of sense is for people who do travel frequently. So I know advisors who have clients who travel 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, decent sized trips. And so it just makes more sense for them to pay a $5,000, $10,000 retainer on an annual basis to have unlimited access to that advisor and to be able to be ensured of having that advisor's help and assistance. So that's another thing to consider as an option for people. However, right now, people aren't traveling the way they did in 2018, 2019, just because of the restrictions. So maybe instead of traveling 3 or 4 or 5, 6 times a year, they may only travel once or twice. So there are a number of advisors who have said, I'm going to put that model on the shelf for right now, and I'm going to go back to a per trip model. It'll save my clients money, which they will appreciate and will help secure their business long term and will help secure their loyalty and referrals. So that's something that I've seen a big change in this year, is how many people have been making that switch from a retainer model to an in-person model. And I have thankfully, or a per person, per trip model, I have thankfully also seen a decrease, or have heard just in, and this is anecdotal, this is not statistical research, of the number of advisors who are charging that plan to go fee. So I'll charge you $250 or whatever their fee is. And then if you book it, I'll apply that $250 or half the $250 or some portion of it to the trip itself. So the number of advisors that seem to be doing that has decreased. And I really think, this is just my personal opinion, I really think that's a good thing, because as I said earlier, that to me, that just feels like that you're saying, I don't really feel like I should charge a fee, so I'm just going to sort of step my toe in here and charge this. The reason I think fees are so important for advisors is, and this is again my opinion, but this is typical of our sort of belief at Gifted Travel Network, is that first of all, you're a professional and you should be compensated. Second, it's an important part of your cash flow. And boy, did we learn about cash flow in 2020. You could book $5 million worth of travel in 2020. It didn't really matter if you relied solely on commission, because nobody was going anywhere, at least for quite a while. And so what happened was you would end up with all these future bookings and all this money that was due to you, but no money to pay the internet bill or the phone bill or the rent or anything else this particular month. And so a lot of people really sat down and took a hard look at that and said, this is just not a sustainable model for me. And I've been thinking about fees, and now I'm going to bite the bullet and do it. So if that's you and you have questions about either the practicality of how you charge fees, post in the chat. Happy to answer questions about that. And we can talk about that. There's a number of different ways that people actually process them. We can talk about, if you want to talk about how much people actually charge. I've seen the range from really tiny fees to $10,000 annual retainers. And this is just for vacation travel. We're not talking about corporate travel or meeting and incentive travel, just vacation travel. So I've seen the range of those. So if you have comments on that, I'm happy to answer or address those as well. The other challenge, I think, that the big challenge I think people have with fees is, what's the right number? How do I come up with the amount of money that I'm going to charge? And I'll tell you, I think the biggest mistake that people make when they're coming up with this number is that they go too low. If you work with an architect and you're going to remodel a room of your house or add on a room to your house, and they help you come up with all that stuff, and they told you that they were going to charge $50, you would think to yourself, I'm not really sure that this person knows what they're doing. Now, that's sort of an apples and oranges comparison to travel, to be fair, because architects typically don't get paid commission from the products that they sell, whereas travel professionals do. But still, same thing. If you talk to one travel advisor and they tell you that their fee is $250, and you talk to another one and they tell you their fee is $25 or $50, or anything less than $100, I think that your most consumers' natural assumption is that the person who charges more is better than the person who charges less. That's certainly not necessarily true, but that's just sort of our belief system in the United States. Is something that generally something that costs more is better than something that costs less. And there are lots of psychological discussions we could get into that, but from a practical standpoint, what it means is that there's no right number for anybody. So if I said $250, which is a number I probably hear as the most common per trip fee that people charge, there are certainly plenty of people who charge $1,000 per trip, and there are certainly people who charge $100 per trip. Some of the reason for the price differences has to do with what you're planning. So if it's more complex, obviously it should cost more. The level of luxury that you're planning. A luxury client is going to pay more and expects to pay more than somebody who's booking a more mass market or moderate level property or trip in general. The other thing that comes into it is region of the country. So you can imagine that just like gasoline costs a lot more in California than it does in North Carolina, where I live, there are regional differences in service fees as well. And so people who are in New York City and in California are typically being charged more as a professional fee from a travel advisor than maybe somebody who lives in Florida, which has got to have the highest number per capita of travel advisors in the country. I don't know that for a fact, but it just certainly seems that way. There's certainly lots of travel companies headquartered there. There's lots of travel advisors there. And so there's, probably a little bit more competition. And so that comes into it as well. And your unique specialty also comes into it. If your specialty is a little more run of the mill or a little more common, you probably are not going to get as much interaction or as much fee as somebody who is going to be doing something very unique. So if you are a real master at putting together Italian cooking tours in Italy, that you're going to command a higher fee than somebody who's just working on something that is a more common trip. So those make some differences as well. And just like any other aspect of your business, you really should revisit this fee structure from time to time. And it needs to be a fee that you feel good about, that you feel like accurately represents what it is that you have to offer, that represents the skill that you have, not necessarily the experience that you have, because I would argue that people who are new to the industry, if they are well connected, they are well trained, and they have access to resources like we're part of Virtuoso. If you have access to Virtuoso resources, you should be charging a higher amount than somebody who doesn't have access to resources. And which is why I don't always talk about, well, if you've been doing it for this many years, you should charge, this fee, and it's more when you've been doing this, more when you're doing that. One of the things I encourage people to do is sit down and write out a list of everything you do for clients and take a look at how expansive that list is, and whether that's inclusive of gifts, or if it includes dining reservations. I'm not talking about like at Disney. I'm just talking about like you've got people who are going to Barcelona and you find the best restaurants for them and make dining reservations. That level of service and that level of detail, almost being like a concierge, should really command a higher fee than other just general services do. So sit down and write that list out and think about what you're putting together, and then look at your fee and see if you feel it's actually appropriate. I mean, if you're spending 40 hours planning a very comprehensive trip for somebody, you should be paid accordingly. And how you're paid actually has nothing to do with the amount of commission that you're getting. I do know that there are advisors out there who say, well, if I book this product for you, or this product, my fee is this amount because they don't pay much commission. But if I book this, or this, they pay better commission. And so that your fee is going to be smaller. I don't think the two things should have anything to do with one another. The fee that you charge a client, the professional fee that you charge, is a service fee that they're paying for your service. They're paying for your knowledge, your expertise, and what you're doing for them. The commission is a thank you from the supplier for booking them. And one doesn't have anything to do with the other. So I encourage you to sort of separate those things in your mind. And talk to your colleagues. If you're involved in your local ASTA chapter, or if you have local people that you get together with, people that are part of the same host agency or part of the same consortia, talk to them and ask them, what do they do about fees? How much do they charge? How do they structure them? And just see what else is out there. You might be surprised that you are really on the low end or really on the high end. That does not necessarily mean you need to change, but I think people do like to have a general frame of reference. So I hope that that's kind of helpful. If you have any comments about fees or questions that we can answer, I'm happy to address those. I wrote an article on this topic today that it goes out in our weekly newsletter that's free. If you would like to subscribe, you can send an email to join us at giftedtravelnetwork.com, and we'll be happy to send that newsletter to you every week. And it's always on some sort of a topic related to what we're talking about as we are today, or something that's of relevance to the independent travel advisor. So that's join us at giftedtravelnetwork.com. So that's a way to get the newsletter and get some information. It also is posted on our website, giftedtravelnetwork.com. You can go to the blog section, and there are a bunch of articles posted there. There's a series I did earlier this year on fees, and that goes into a bit more detail about that as well. The bottom line is I've been in travel for 20 plus years, and I am passionate about this industry. And from the moment I joined it, all the way through now, I've felt the same way. Travel advisors are amazing, incredible people who don't make enough money and should make more money than they do. And they do so much for their clients. And clients are really starting to see that. And Shannon and I talked about this last week, that we really believe that we are beginning the golden age of the travel agent. More people are seeking out travel advisors right now than they ever have in the last 30 or 40 years, easily. So far more people. And the great news is, leading the charge of that is millennials. And so it's not like it's baby boomers and then they're going to stop being able to travel and we have to start over again. But millennials are much more aware of how valuable time is, and they want to work with somebody who's an expert who can make things easier. So with that in mind, they go out and find somebody who can make life easier and tap into resources and get them a vacation that they can't get on their own. And so that's a wonderful thing for travel advisors. It bodes very well for the future. And I think that there are so many people in this industry who are so incredible, who could have more money in their pocket, could pay their bills more easily, could afford to pay themselves a salary, could afford to travel more if they focused more on the business side of things, and particularly if they focused on fees. So that's why I talk about fees probably a fair bit. And if you have any questions you want to ask me about that and you don't want to put them in the comments, feel free to send an email to join us at giftedtravelnetwork.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has about that particular topic. So I know we're coming up on 2:30 and Eastern time, and I hope that you'll be able to join Shannon. Hopefully Shannon will be able to join me next week. Hopefully she'll have electricity again and internet, and we'll be able to be back on the show with me, and we will talk about some interesting topic, I'm sure. And if you have a suggestion for a topic, again, email join us at giftedtravelnetwork.com, and I'm happy to share that with Shannon, and we will talk about whatever you want us to talk about, because the point of this whole series is that we love the travel industry and we want travel agents to have more success, which is why it's the Travel Agent Success Series. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you for dropping by. And please let us know if there's any way that we can be of service or can be of assistance. Thank you.